Well, for the second time in the past decade, a woman on the top of a major party's presidential ticket has failed to secure the White House. While Vice President Kamala Harris, the first woman to ever hold that office, did secure the majority of female voters, she had less support among women than the past three Democratic presidential candidates. Micki McElya joins me now. She's a professor of history at the University of Connecticut. Professor, are women less likely to vote for women? This was a bit surprising for all of us.
I think when we consider how women are voting, we have to think about how different groups of women are voting. That the conventional wisdom going into this was that there would be an extensive gender gap in the vote, but it was often understood that white women who voted in the majority for Trump the last time around would not do that this time. There was an underlying sort of narrative that was actually about white women voters and less about women in total.
How much is playing into gender politics a detriment to women? Did you see that in this election? Was talking so much about reproductive rights akin to trying to separate women and men?
I mean, we have to start from the baseline that gender and race together are fundamental parts of every single election that happens in this country, but that in this case, I think we saw sort of the heightened discourse and overt focus on these things that really sort of categorize people into universal categories that were really undifferentiated and make it kind of impossible for us to have a really thoughtful conversation about what happened. We see that Kamala Harris chose not to highlight her potential first female president for the United States, as Hillary Clinton had when she ran, but still it was very much a part of the underlying focus.
Well, and it wasn't just Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton. Republicans also had in Nikki Haley, a candidate who potentially could have run for the presidency, but she also lost to candidate Trump, who very much was courting male voters. So I want some context for us in thinking about gender and leadership, because about 1/3 of the 193 UN member states have had a female leader. Currently, 29 countries have a woman serving as the head of state. Is there something about the United States that makes us more resistant to female leaders?
Yes, the first part of the answer to that question is that structurally, in terms of our system of government, the way that we elect our head of state or head of government is a direct presidential election by the entire population, or by the entire population eligible to vote. This is not true in many of those other countries, which are parliamentary governments or mixed parliamentary and presidential governments where they have a prime minister as well as a president. And in those systems, women are able to move up through their party networks and are appointed to these positions by their party members and not by a general election.
All right.
So essentially, that doesn't get the United States off the hook, but complicates that picture.
All right. Micki McElya from the University of Connecticut. Thank you.